Hi everyone, Mature Simmer here. So welcome to a good early morning here on the farm. So I'm going to go ahead, get myself connected here to my sprayer, and we're going to go ahead and treat for weeds. So nice thing with farming, well, or most things, is you kind of know what you need to do. It happens and it just repeats, and you just keep doing the work, and things should pan out kind of the same way. So that's always a good thing. Alright, so we've got 3,766. I don't top this off each time because it just doesn't take that much time to do it. It's probably dark enough. I should probably go ahead and let this do its thing. So we'll kind of lock in here, and we'll go from there. And we've used, what, 7, 8? Oh, we're using a bit more now. You can see there's quite a bit of things turning gray. So we did hit a larger expanse of weeds. There's always like a little bit of concern each time I start this. Like, are they growing, or am I not getting credit for it? But it looks like we're good. So I'm probably getting close, I was thinking, to the point where I'm going to need to resample the field, because I think that lasts maybe 5 or 6 harvests. And so I think, as I said, this is our 5th crop now. So definitely a lot, a lot of stuff pulled out, but I probably have gone nearly as far as I'm going to be able to. I'm certainly closer to having the sample than I am from not. So it's going to be soon, I'm sure. So let me back this up. And then the nice thing of kind of doing that, what I'm doing here is then I'll be able to just lock it on. So let's see, I should be good now. Oh, you know what, well, that's not good. Because what that turns into is now I have, well, we'll go out a bit. I mean, because clearly we're at the tracks. So yeah, this is probably more accurate at this point. I'm just not sure if it is. I guess we'll find out as we go. I mean, it's definitely spraying. Let me look at my map here. It'll be this one. No. This one. So yeah, I just want to make sure like those little green dots that exist are not incorrect. So, like those. See, I'm not seeing any left. I knew here I had missed a bit. I'm going to have to go further down on that end of the field when I go. But yeah, today is pretty good. The question is, when do I want to tackle hay? Because that's what I need to do this summer. So I'm thinking, I don't know, I guess, I might start on it today. I might not. Either way, hay will be its own animal, as it always is. And it's kind of that same situation. I'm here on the field. I can kind of babble on about stuff. There's nothing specific. I suppose, I can jump back into what I was talking about yesterday, which was the auctions. At this point, I'm a little confused in that I thought we were only going to see the auctions for our server at any point. So I'm not seeing like things coming up for sale on other servers. So that's working as I would expect. But what I am seeing is the completed auctions. There's a bunch showing up that are clearly not our server. And the other piece is there's no bids on anything that did come up. So it's also a bit interesting in that it just looks like either nobody's active and looking for any land, which seems unlikely, or I just don't know if something weird is still going on. Because it is showing auctions coming up, and yeah, they are completing kind of every few hours, which is what I would expect, but there's nothing showing up in our upcoming window. So it doesn't look yet as if any of the auctions that are available are for our server. What I don't know is with the counter that's showing up, like I think it was showing 104 auctions coming or something. Like once we're at that point, would it show up in the upcoming window, or does it need to get closer? Because in the past, but just before the revamp, I think we got like a 24-hour notice. It might have been a 48-hour notice. So like 24 to 48 hours before the auction was starting, it was listed in upcoming. And then obviously, as it was active, it was listed in the active area, and we could bid. And then it basically, would show up. What I don't recall is on the completed auctions, or ended auctions, or however they're listed on the site, if we saw everybody. We may have on that, so that may actually be okay. But it is just weird that I'm seeing dozens and dozens of auctions in that completed thing, and there's no bids on any piece of land. And I've not seen any. Now again, I think we're certainly at best there's a handful at most of Hobo's Hollows maps, so I certainly have not seen this map show up. You're kind of looking at a tiny little thumbnail that you're trying to squint at and figure out, is that my map? Because it's not also listing like what the servers are, which I thought it used to do as well, for the ones that are completed. So I've certainly seen some maps that are kind of repeating, meaning they're appearing in multiple auctions, but those are probably multiple servers with that map running on them that are just having different plots come up at different times. But as of this morning, no upcoming auctions for our servers, so I'll continue to monitor that. And typically what I would do is, it was part of my morning routine. I would look at the auctions. I'd go onto the server to try to sync it. Again, I don't have to worry about syncing at this point with the real-time sync mod that we have. Alright, I'm just going to kind of move over here. I don't want to go off the edge of the field, but I don't want to get stuck on trees either and just have to waste time going around. But, we're a little more than 100 liters used, so it's definitely not a small amount. But yeah, I would say this is definitely a different pattern than I've seen in the weeds before. We're drifting to that blue line, so I'm going to be in danger of going off, so I'd rather drift in this direction if I'm going to drift anywhere. But I've always kind of been wondering, is the pattern just set for a field? And there does appear to be some randomness to it. I've certainly had more ability this time to pay a little bit of attention to it, because it's a pretty straightforward operation I've got going here now at this point. You know, the dairy is really probably the most of the profit focus at this point, because I don't have the opportunity to sit there and really think about crops. I'm just growing them, selling them, and so yes, I'm making some money there, but once again, when I sell milk, I'm doing, you know, especially if I have a full barn, we're talking about 8 or 9 loads full, so I'm getting, you know, $250,000 in sales there, which is far more than I can get off this field with any kind of crop that I do. The piece that I'm still been pretty bad at trying to determine is, am I, whoops, I was trying to turn it off, but when it's not on, then it turns it on. I was talking about the crops and what I was trying to determine, but there wasn't really, I don't know where I was going with that, because I know, like, I don't have a silo, so yeah, I suppose that's, I think, what I was saying. Like, I don't have to determine when I'm going to sell crop for maximum profit, because I don't have anywhere to hold it. And that goes back to the auctions, where I'm waiting for a couple tiny pieces of land over there by the road, you know, kind of my road back here that comes to my farm, because I'm really more like on a little dirt road that runs off the end of the paved roads that go to the commercial area right near the farm here. But so I don't have to sit there and think about what I need to do with the crop, and so therefore it becomes a little simpler. There's just less activity, and so kind of thinking about, you know, what happened and how much I've made, and as I shared last episode, it kind of seems to be landing around the $80,000 or $90,000 a year profit. But what I haven't been able to determine is, do I get a full thing of milk in a year? And I don't think I do. I think I actually can go, it goes longer. So even though I'm making $250,000, it may be very similar to the crop amount. It's just a little bit simpler to deal with, because you're just giving them food every couple days, and eventually you just take a few trucks over and sell. But it's not anywhere near the same amount of time as it takes for crops, especially, you know, when I'll be harvesting, when it's several hours to get that done, plus all this time that it's taking to plant and weed and all of the work that goes into running a field. I'm going to turn the sprayer off for a second, just get a little bit of faster movement. Oh, good. I always love when the GPS is just in the ignoring state. So you probably saw the green line turn on, but the tractor just continuing. So I guess it keeps you on your toes. You always have to pay attention, because the automation is still not 100% functional all the time. And I don't know that I've seen or heard any reason that someone has brought up why that happens. And it's certainly something, as long as I've been in FSN and played multiplayer, that people have always said, oh yeah, turn off, you know, your GPS if it gets stuck or whatever. Like, I think it's just an inherent issue of how that mod works within the system, and I'm assuming some sort of polling in the back for key presses or whatever somehow conflicts with something else, and therefore it gets ignored somewhat, because obviously it's not fully ignored, because the green line is turning on. So like, the mod knows I press the button, it's just the mod is not steering like it's supposed to. Because the one thing, like, we can't see here, I think in 19 we did used to have the degrees on there. I mean, I guess we have it in the mini map, so I suppose maybe that's more where I'm thinking, but you can see it's going between 180.1 and 180.0. I wouldn't be surprised if it then went to 179.9. It even went up to 0.2 at one point. But that kind of shows there's like micro steering going on as it goes over the bumps in the field and so forth, and so it's constantly correcting back to the cardinal 180, but I don't know if I'm using the word cardinal correct. It's a cardinal direction, I know that, but the cardinal direction might actually refer to some specific angle. So that, you know, it may be 0 degrees, but I don't know. I'm trying to sound impressive, and I may not be. Alright, so we'll turn this back on, and we will continue here. So, you know, it takes a while, even though I've got a good amount of working with here. It certainly takes some time to get through the field. There's not any quick way to do this. This is kind of the nature of farming. I mean, I suppose it's the nature of any endeavor and task we do, is it takes what it takes. I do remember, you know, as a kid when I was helping my dad, he'd always be like, hey, I need you to help me for an hour. It didn't take me very long. It probably was a few years, because I probably just didn't have the concept as a younger boy of the what was happening. But at some point, pretty early on, I do remember always having the thought of, it's never how long he says, it's always way longer. Because stuff would not work right, whatever. And so I don't think he was like intentionally lying, but I think he just never acknowledged the fact that you're always having to run to the store, you're always having to like kind of do another side job to make the job you're working on work. You know, you suddenly find something else that's broken that is like, well, I'm not going to put this new item in here and then have this other thing break in 2 months, so I'm going to have to do that. Or, you know, or you're taking something apart and you snap something that was not visibly broken at that point, but obviously now is, because you've destroyed it and so forth. So I'm, you know, now that I'm older and responsible for my own home, I try to take those lessons to heart and say, you know, if this was to be perfect, you know, this would take me, I think, you know, an hour or whatever, but it's not going to be perfect, so I know it'll be longer than that. And I don't know that I really even tried to estimate, but I know that, like, the last thing I did, I had to do some work on the garage door, and it turned into like an 8 or 9 hour ordeal. And there was no way I was thinking it would be that long. I mean, and nothing really was different from what I assumed it was going to be at the beginning. It's just doing the actual work, because parts were rusted and I had to cut some bolts, and that took a while. Luckily, I had all the stuff I needed to do that and was able to do that. And then, you know, but once things are cut, they're still in the fastener, still in the item you were fastening it to, in this case the garage door. So then you got to move some holes over, because you still want things fastened near the space where you cut the bolts, because obviously that's why things were there, because it was determined, hey, this is about a good point to put another fastener in. So, you know, with all that, it ended up being something, I think I started at like 9 or 10 in the morning, and I wasn't done till like 6 at night. So it was a challenge. And so certainly I run into stuff like that here on Farming Simulator all the time, where it's like, oh, I didn't realize cows need to be fed, or I forgot to do this the last time I was on, and, you know, suddenly you're diverting last episode was a great example of that, where it was like, well, before I plant, let me go deal with all the stuff for the cows. And then by the time I got it all done, an hour plus had passed. So, and some of that was I had to step away multiple times and so forth, so it wasn't like I was constantly working in that case, but sometimes you are. So yeah, just kind of filling time with chatter. At this point, I think, yeah, I'll just keep going until I finish, because we're past the halfway point. And so, yeah, it'll be a little bit longer, but this isn't a exceptionally long job. This isn't going to be a 2-hour episode or anything like that. But otherwise, weeding becomes a really short episode, and that might not be any fun for folks to just have 5 minutes. Once again, I don't say it enough. I'm going to say it again. First off, thanks for folks who do watch. But, without comments or whatever, I'm kind of shooting in the dark as to what works well for folks, and trying to read the tea leaves of YouTube analytics if I take a look at it and, see, hey, are longer videos watched more often? Are they watched less often? Are they the same? Like, I frankly am not seeing anything in the data that gives me any guidance. Otherwise, obviously, I'd be settling into something. So you'll notice sometimes it'll just be, hey, there's a 45-minute episode that contains one job and not a whole lot of new discussion or anything. But it's also the nature of this kind of gameplay and so forth that there isn't a lot to figure out. There isn't a lot of problem solving. It's just doing the work and putting in the time. And for folks who want to watch and just listen to whatever I decide to chat about, I mean, that becomes more of the thing that I'm able to provide, is just talk about whatever is on my mind and hope it's interesting enough and that it's relaxing enough for you to just watch the tractor go up and down the field or the implement go around, that you sit and listen to me babble while there's kind of some background imagery going on. Because obviously I'm not talking about the weeding and all at all, because it's pretty straightforward. Everybody understands how it works, and there's not a whole need to explain it over and over again every time. I certainly do sometimes, because there's probably, hopefully, new people always finding the channel, and usually I think most of us, when I find a new YouTube channel, I know for sure I'm like, I just kind of watch the videos to see if I like the channel that are kind of the most recent ones, and go from there. And then depending on what my interest is, I might go back and watch a lot more, or I may never look at anything they have historically. But usually on the gaming channels, if I find out, like, there's a guy I really like in Planet Coaster, Nerd Chacho, who does kind of realistic theme park builds, and I think he's on his 8th or 9th season, 8th or 9th different park. So he's building a historical park right now, the Royal Mile, that is in England. And he started, like, I think in the 1920s, and then is moving up, and so it's the first time he's trying to do a park to kind of show its evolution through time. So each episode's like a certain year and so forth. So some of his chatter ends up being just what was going on at the time historically, because he's now in the late 1940s, obviously, so he chatted about World War II and so forth in one episode. The one that was right after the war, I think in 1945, is what he decided to do. So, or maybe it was 1947, I think, actually, so that there were a couple years after the war, and kind of things had started to settle into a normal cycle again off of a wartime footing. And he was able to kind of give that information. So yeah, in the real world, the thing that's just been disturbingly fascinating, because I don't think it's going to end well, is right now is the time when this submersible that has taken a group of 5 or so down to the Titanic has vanished, and they're searching for it right now. So to me, that's been what has captured my attention in the last day or two of news. So I saw this morning, they're kind of getting to the point where if they really are still somehow stuck underwater or whatever, that they'd be really running out of oxygen and so forth. And so hopefully they find everybody alive and well, but obviously, as with any search and rescue, once time is kind of your enemy in those things. All right, just making sure, like, I think I've got it all done, but I wasn't entirely sure. But yeah, any search and rescue, the more time that goes by, the less likely it is you're going to have a good outcome. I mean, if you think about abductions, kidnappings, whatever, missing persons, it's the same thing. Like, they're always pushing, like, we want to find them quickly in the first 24 hours after they've been reported, or as it extends, the likelihood of finding someone alive is less and less. And obviously it's not like they're anywhere that, hey, they got lost and they can just, go to the local store, get some food and water and whatever. I mean, they're out in the middle of the ocean. So as more time passes, it's a finite set of supplies, whether it's oxygen or, obviously, I'm sure they didn't bring, they might have brought some snacks, thinking, oh, it's going to be, 6 hours or something, I might want to eat a little something, and they might have been able to do that on the submersible, but, all of that starts to come to bear. Water, food. So we'll see how that goes, but that's the only other thing I had to chat about. But we are done here for now at this task. Again, I may return, start working on the hay, cutting the grass and so forth, but that will be in the next episode. So I will see you next time.